Welcome to Vibe Querying with MCP, the show where we don't just query data, we vibe with it. I'm Jared, the one asking, how does it work?
And I'm Marie, the one asking, what does it mean for the business? But before we jump in today's episode, which is going to be really exciting with two Jareds, we're going to give you an explanation of what you can expect on the show.
Yeah, and so it's all going to start with Model Context Protocol, or MCP for short. Model Context Protocol is simply a protocol designed to connect your AI models to external data sources securely and efficiently. And MCP is going to enable these AI models, AI clients, or even agents to access real-time data, real-time systems, real-time workflows, and interact naturally with that data, either using conversational AI, if you and I are in a chat client, or through agentic action.
And one of the ways that you can use the MCP protocol is using CData MCP servers, which we released a few weeks ago in beta, to connect your favorite LLM like Claude or Gemini or others to your work data like Salesforce and NetSuite and other systems. And the way that this works is that we combine an MCP server with CData's connector library of 350 sources to finally give AI models access to the work data that you need them to be really useful.
Yeah, and so that brings us to this concept of vibe querying. So vibe querying is like vibe coding. It's a way to use natural language with an AI to explore your data to get answers. So you no longer need intimate knowledge of the data schema. You don't need pre-built data pipelines. You simply just ask questions in the client of your choice, and the server provides live access to the data. The LLM uses its own knowledge and provides answers to those questions.
And so that's what we're going to show you in this content series is how to use vibe querying in your everyday work. So we're going to dive into real data with real sources, with real examples, and oftentimes real guests like Jared Feeney today, and show you how you can use MCP servers in your everyday work life. So let's get querying.
Yeah, so today's episode is vibing with sales execution. It's all about managing your deal portfolio. So we're asking for answers from Salesforce data. We're going to take the point of view of a sales leader who's looking to understand their broader portfolio of opportunities and learn actionable next steps to drive those opportunities to close. So Marie, you already said Jared's name. Let's go for the full introduction.
Yes, so we have two Jareds today, which I will make many jokes about this episode. But Jared Feeney is a senior sales director here at CData and has some very interesting things to show us.
So welcome to the show, Jared.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So I am going to steal the thunder a little bit, and I'm gonna be Jared Prime for just a minute before we really jump into the querying and the actual asking of questions and getting answers. I think it's important to show just how easy it is to use one of CData's MCP servers. So let me share my screen, and of course this is going to take longer than I wanted. All right, so CData's MCP servers are available from our website. They are in free beta mode for the rest of the year, so you can download them and play with them. And it's as easy as just finding the data source that you want an MCP server for. In this case, it's Salesforce, entering your email and clicking the download button. It's going to download the installer, and then the installer is going to execute just like any other installer. It's going to ask for permissions. All of this should look familiar to anybody that's downloaded anything ever before. Here's this license agreement that I'm going to agree to that I've never read. And I'll just keep clicking next through the installer as you would and begin the installation. At this point, Claude must be running. So we will fix that. All right, let's try that again. All right, so we close Claude. Claude has to be closed in order to continue the installation. But what the installer is doing is installing all of the libraries that are required. And then it's going to walk you through configuring a connection to your data source. So in this case, it's Salesforce. I've already got a bunch of different connections configured. But the way that's done is you simply name your configuration. And with Salesforce, it's as easy as clicking connect. And this is probably going to happen automatically because I'm already signed into Salesforce. If I had not been signed in, a window would have opened in my browser for me to log into Salesforce. But at this point, not only have we installed all of the libraries that we need, but we've also configured Claude to be able to talk to Salesforce without having to do any scripting or anything crazy like that. So now we can reopen Claude, and I will show what the list of tools looks like. But then I'm going to turn things back over to Marie and Jared to actually ask questions because Jared's going to use his own instance of everything going on. So you can see here, we talked about CData's connectors driving the MCP servers. For anyone that isn't familiar, CData's connectors provide a tabular model of all of the data sources that we connect to. And then because LLMs are super familiar with databases based on the training data that they've received, it makes it really easy for them to explore any data source because as far as they're concerned, they're talking to a database. So I will end my share. I will turn things over to other Jared and promote him to Jared Prime, probably for the remainder of the episode.
It's been a long time coming. Thank you, Jared. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And I'll just talk through how on a daily basis, I'm in sales. So, I love to ask questions. And so there's no better way to ask questions than through an LLM like Claude. What I've done here is, so it defaults to your chats. I've gone ahead and created a project that I've named the CData Sales Data Review just for the purposes of this demo. Within those projects, you can give a lot of project knowledge. So I've made it, set project instructions just to make sure that they know who I am, what I'm trying to figure out, what is important and valuable to me. I've also, to make sure that data is obfuscated and data is kept secret, made some specific instructions regarding the data that's going to be showcased today, and as well as different reps on my team. So that's generally the purposes of this. And what I think is so valuable about things like Claude is day-to-day is a very busy time for me as a sales director. You get a lot of different questions coming to you, but you also need to try to think both strategically and tactically, which can be very challenging because strategic initiatives take a lot of thought, take a lot of planning, and sometimes there just simply isn't enough time in the day. So with the concept of vibe querying, what I think is so valuable about it is it makes it much lower pressure. You don't have to really think through all the types of questions and plan out. You get to just create questions as you go along. What usually ends up being the most valuable for me is what the initial question is. And so since we're talking about sales execution, a big place for me to start, I care about North America specifically. And so one question that I tend to have is, I'll copy and paste it here, is like, if I'm focusing on my North American region and I'm thinking about companies under $1 billion in annual revenue, what are my deals that are that potential for flipping? What are the main blockers? How can I become very tactical with sort of like a strategic question? What you'll see with Claude is it will create more thoughts than what you put in your question, which actually breeds inspiration for a lot of my follow-up questions, which is really the nature of the vibing.
Yeah. So one question for you, since I'm the one that's always asking, how does it work, is if you were to ask this question without an LLM backing the answer, like what's the timeline for actually driving into this?
So it's hard to say because there are a lot of, if you're a power user of something like Salesforce, which I would probably consider myself able to do that, you could create the reports yourself, have to drag around the different objects, but you're never going to actually get it right. And so that process by itself might take an hour, 2 hours. If you were to go and ask someone on your Salesforce team to build a report for you, they might be busy with other reports, so that could also take a while. And that's really just getting the data. That's not actually getting the insights. So you can see here, it's already done basically the report creation aspect of it and the analysis of it in maybe a minute. So there's a very huge return on investment in terms of time.
And I'm curious, you didn't give it any definitions on what would make a deal at risk. But if you could talk us through kind of how it took that prompt and how it started thinking about what makes a deal at risk in the response, Jared, that would be great.
Yeah, so a lot of this, and this is where it is very, very valuable for your reps to input your data appropriately, because what it's doing is taking the different fields and different columns, next step, last activity, not being within 7 days, 15 days. Those aren't things that I've set as criteria to define the risk, to your point, Marie, but it recognizes, like, if you haven't spoken to someone in 300 days, it's probably a risky deal. So that's also the huge value of it, is it's creating based off of just industry standards for what sales leaders should be looking for, what it considers to be at risk, but it also has project instructions the flexibility should you need to make it more granular. If your business is okay with not talking to someone for 30 days, for whatever reason that might be, Claude is probably going to be able to understand that.
And I think what I always love about what Claude does here, and we've seen this in previous episodes, is that it reads notes and emails that are in Salesforce. And so kind of, crossing the line from strictly structured data into unstructured data by doing that, and pulls out a lot of insights, which I think is hugely valuable over what you could get over a traditional report, because it's really hard to report on those types of fields, those long free text fields, but that's usually where reps are actually putting in notes and have a lot of insight. So I always find that that is a really nice benefit of doing kind of a Claude research approach, is kind of being able for it to be able to read all of those, read all of that text across emails, support cases, notes, across all of the objects, and be able to use that to identify some risk, which I think I can see it doing here, which is very nice. And I think it kind of helps alleviate some of the data hygiene challenges, which I know you are very familiar with, Jared, and trying to get everything updated all the time in Salesforce.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would say too is I imagine some folks might be looking at this and going, well, I have reports that already do this for me. What's the value? And it's not that this necessarily replaces those reports. I'm still going to use the hundreds of reports that I have strewn about my Salesforce in different folders. But this gives more contextualized information to those reports, to your point. So it's something where both parts can still continue to be equal. And what I love about this part is a report's not going to give you recommended actions by timeline. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is the appropriate action, but this breeds the art of possibility and what you need to start thinking about as different ways to challenge yourself and mentor yourself as a sales director, which you can then pass on to your reps.
Yeah, definitely. And you feel that this is pretty accurate, or at least it's surfacing kind of the right things for you to dig into as a manager.
Yeah, I think what the huge value is, it surfaces and brings up things that you then look into. And so if I just ask it to bring up the top 5 most important deals that are at risk, it's going to showcase those. I should know them already, but it's a nice double check to make sure that I'm having all my bases covered. And when I need to talk to my management team as well, I can get them the most up-to-date information in a very quick manner.
That's awesome. And I think we saw this again in a previous episode where we had Jacqueline from our product management team on doing an analysis of support cases to figure out where she should spend her roadmap effort. What I thought was really helpful was it kind of gave you the summary of the potential business impact. So if they did one type of product management change or feature implementation, it would defer X number of cases. And you can see Claude doing it here at the bottom. So it's telling you that your best case, your likely case, your worst case on kind of where things could fall, which I would imagine is also a lot of work that you have to do regularly, Jared, to figure those things out for your forecasting.
Exactly. And forecasting is something that at every organization in the sales industry is very valuable. So being able to create those forecasts, and this is only leveraging our Salesforce data. We have other pieces of data and different systems that if you use multiple MCP servers from CData, you'd be able to coagulate all that information and then have it give you really, really actionable insights related to forecasting and reports. And so having those disparate data systems all connected in a natural language way it's something that I don't think we've seen before.
Awesome.
All right, what's next? I'm itching. I'm like, all right,
yeah,
we've got stuff, but
so,
like, what's the next question? Where do we go from here?
I know. And so what this tells me is like, okay, we've got some deals that we need to figure out what we're going to do, right? Like you can't just have something that has been stagnant for 151 days. So I might go, all right, Claude, dig into this Silverstone Technologies deal for me. What are my biggest risks? What do I need to be on the lookout for? And I'm a visual kind of person, so I wanted to create a visual guide, 4-step PowerPoint that showcases, I won't say PowerPoint, but I'll say presentation that showcases this for me. And so it's going to go through and do this. It writes HTML for you after running the queries, which is really fantastic because it makes it so it's actionable and you can click on it. If you ever need that to give that to your upper management, it makes it look so it's very nice. But it also is, again, it's not replacing the critical thinking that you should do as a sales leader. It's more providing other bits of information that you likely know, but in our environment with the hundreds of deals, maybe even thousands of opportunities that we're running, it's impossible to be up to date with every single thing at all times. So it's already finished the query. Right now, it's just creating the HTML, which I've never written a line of HTML before. If you were to ask me to do this presentation piece, it would probably take me at least a month. That might be an exaggeration, might not be. I don't have any knowledge of the coding. But having used this for a couple of different examples, it does add a little bit of time because it's coding for you. But the end result is something that's like pretty. I didn't imagine it would be able to do this. I was really pleasantly surprised when it did.
Yeah. So while this is building, Jared, can you expand those run queries? I'm just curious, like what endpoints in Salesforce it's hitting as it goes through this.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
oh, look, it's done.
Oh my goodness.
Can you scroll down on this? I'm just
Yeah.
curious what we're hitting. So this looks like this is all opportunity. Oh, and it's joining it on the account and the owner. So it's tying it to the related account, tying it to the rep. And then if you scroll up a little bit, there's just one thing that I want to call out. And yeah, oh, go back. Yep, right there is perfect. So all of these fields that end in _C are custom fields that our organization has added to Salesforce. And because this MCP server is powered by CData's connectors, and our connectors are engineered to hit every part of an API available, that means that we're able to pull out custom fields. If you had custom objects that were related to these deals in some way, Claude would be able to find those. But anyway, enough about how it works. Let's jump back to the Marie and Jared. What does it mean for the business conversation?
So
Yeah,
this,
and
a very high degree of alert.
I would immediately ask it to change this from the dark red to a nicer color. But yeah, go ahead, Marie.
No, let's see what else it put in this presentation.
And so what's really nice is I'm a sucker for a nice interface. It's made this interface nice. So like nice bubbles, good transitions. It tells you the financial impact, the immediate loss. I will note these are all fake numbers, so we don't have to worry too much. But what went wrong? It gives you a nice timeline of everything. It's referencing all those pieces of information that our sales reps have added into them in the specific timeline because it's able to query those different custom fields that we've added into Salesforce, like Jared mentioned. It's going to give you a recovery plan with estimated timelines for when you need to do everything, how long it would take. And it only did it for 4 slides because I specified for 4 slides. But if you let it run and run and run, it would do whatever it wanted. You can, of course, so this is, what do you do with this? You can export this as an HTML. I've actually already done it for a different example, and then download that file. So I'll pull that up here. And this is a different example, but the same kind of idea where it's showing you the immediate root cause, what the deal value is at, how much it's at risk, and then you just go through the different slides. And so this is something that I've been using with my team to make sure that we're up to date and just proof testing it to see, is this data accurate? It should be, because usually it's based off of the data that they're entering. And it also, for the reps, the biggest part that they have to worry about is they go through a very long process of adding all this data and information into Salesforce. If I am a sales leader and I'm just asking them for that information, has it really saved them any time? Because I'm not referencing the information they added in. If they go through, add all the information, I build something like this and it's not accurate because their information is not correct, they see that immediate cause and effect, where if they were to add all the information updated, one, it would save them time and a proper sales director not asking them to update everything because I'm referencing their information. But two, if they need to build this slide, they can ask me, and suddenly this is something that's presentable to a client that really adds that extra bit of professionalism when it relates to presenting to a client and trying to make sure that we have a path to ultimately what we all care about, a path to close.
That's great. And I think one of the questions that I know I would have if I were watching this content series is, this looks awesome, but is Claude just hallucinating this? Like, how much is the Salesforce CData MCP server actually correcting that and preventing Claude from just coming up with something random? And Jared, I think since you've used this, in real life over a couple of times. How do you feel about that question? Do you feel it's largely accurate?
Yeah, so I think it's as good as the information that we have in Salesforce. So I've tested this with reps and said, is this accurate? And they said, yeah, all of this is accurate. I've had some cases where the rep will go, no, that's not accurate. But then if I were to go through Salesforce and try to essentially replicate what Claude did for me, I would have come to the same conclusion because the information doesn't exist in Salesforce. So that's where it ultimately is based on what the rep is providing. Now, the part about next steps and actionable insights, I think that can be up for interpretation. And that's where you might want to add more specific project instructions based on what your sales culture is, what you care about. Perhaps you use Medic instead of Bant, or you don't like Medic and you like Spin. That's where it is going based off industry standards and pulling that from online. And that can be a bit more subjective compared to objective information that just lives in Salesforce.
That's great. And I think those are probably all instructions you could put into the project like you showed us at the beginning and
Yeah,
give it some more specifics on how you want it to behave. And then I'll just make a note for the audience that are eagle-eyed that this is showing critical findings for Trigyan Technologies, where we started with the Silverstone Technologies deal. That's just the obfuscation rule at play for folks. So it's not actually not following our instructions here. It's just doing a really good job of masking some data in this case.
Yeah, it's like a forced hallucination.
Yes, it's doing what it should. Well, this was a very awesome example, Jared. I always love a good presentation, as you know. So this was great. I know you have something else prepared for us. So where would you go from here?
Yeah, and so the last thing I kind of want to touch on is we dug into very specific examples, but maybe I wanted to get more of a dashboard just to understand. So I want to understand my closed lost deals for fiscal year 2025 to the state. Can you create a nice dashboard quickly, because we're on a demo, that helps to showcase this for our various products. I'm so proud of how well I can type on a demo. Otherwise, I would need to copy and paste a lot of stuff. And if I'm talking to my boss and suddenly we're like, hey, this one product line is having a lot of different issues, like what's going on? I can go into my different reports. I have different tools for that. But sometimes if your single source of truth is Salesforce, you're going to end up going to that place anyway. So a nice place to start and build your hypothesis and build your solutions-oriented mindset is likely going to be Claude through the CData MCP server.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that we like to highlight is that because of the tabular structure other Jared mentioned at the beginning of the call and how we work with SQL, all of our MCP server tools are universal across our data sources. And it really lends itself well to vibe querying and this type of exploration because those tool sets can find anything and really kind of pull any type of data without a specific MCP server tool, which is how most other MCP servers would work. So this kind of exploration, you can see it kind of in the answer to this question. It's doing a run query, run query, run query against different data to really kind of find all the data that it really needs to answer this. And I think that's a unique way that CData MCP servers can address this problem. So I think that's cool to see. And now you have it writing a dashboard.
Yeah, more HTML, or is this JavaScript?
This is HTML. No, this one's HTML still.
Yeah.
Look, it's done.
Wow.
Now, it will have some errors, but still,
Yeah.
this is like you can hover over it. You can see everything that you'd really want to see.
That's awesome.
Yeah, hide those errors. Those aren't important.
Yeah, we can fix those. We can always fix that.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But
So
it
you're
even
like
gives you-
vibe coding and vibe querying at the same time.
Yeah, you're combining the two. I know this is the vibe querying, but like it all starts with the query. So
Yeah.
you have to do the query. Then if you want to code a little bit too, I've always wanted to be a coder, but I wasn't smart enough. So now I just leverage AI to do it for me.
Yeah. And I think one of the other things to call out here is that everything that Jared has been doing has been reading data. So pulling data into the Claude interface for analysis and reporting. But CData's MCP servers are bidirectional. So if at any point, Jared wanted to update the status of a deal or add a note, add an interaction, he would be able to do that directly from Claude. He would just simply ask Claude to do it, and it would create the right query to write that information back into Salesforce.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, I think that was a wonderful example today, Sales Jared, of how you can use Claude for vibe querying for sales execution, as well as some really nice polished examples of how you can use that information with others, with your leaders, with your reps. And I think that's a really nice next step on the vibe querying concept.
Yeah. So I think that's a wrap. Huge thank you to Jared for joining us today. Any closing remarks or thoughts?
No, I would just say, talk to CData. You can get in touch with us. We're happy to talk through more about the MCP servers. I think what's really exciting is we're in a time where a lot of possibility is being created. Before I started using the Salesforce MCP servers, I didn't know any of this was honestly possible. There are a lot of other avenues to explore. So I'm sure that other sales directors, sales leaders watching this can think of ways to expand this opportunity, and we're happy to discuss it with you.
Gotta wrap with the sales pitch. Love it.
Yeah, of course.
And I think we just want to say thanks to everyone who is watching. And if you want to see what your data is saying and follow up, like Sales Jared said, you can hit up the free MCP server beta at cdata.com/MCP.
Yeah, and then once you've downloaded something, you should come hang out with us in the vibe querying subreddit or in our CData community. And you can chat with us about the queries you're seeing and using, the insights you're finding, or all things data related, maybe even outside of MCP.
And so until next time, stay curious and keep vibing.